Sometimes you gotta pull out your craft supplies and make a mess to figure out what you want to make. Stick around and find out what I'm doing today in my craft room. Hi, my name is Jenny and welcome to my channel where we share paper crafting tutorials and inspiration. Let's dive into today's video. If you guessed that we're playing with Distress Oxides, you are correct. Today I'm going to be playing around with some Distress Oxides and making some backgrounds. I think making backgrounds is a super important part of playing in your crafty space because it gets you using your tools, trying different techniques, and testing out things that you like, and eventually finding out what you don't like and what you love. So this is my session for today. I played around with my Distress inks. As you can see in the beginning of this video, I have a large collection of Distress Oxides. I don't have them all, but I have quite a few. And I have ink blending tools, which I regret. I regret having so many ink blending tools. I thought I wanted an ink blending tool for every single color, and it was probably not the most smartest purchase I had ever done. But I do love the look of my Distress inks in my little container that I had made. So what I'm doing is just swiping my ink pads on a glass mat and spraying it with water. And I'm just playing around with different color combinations and tapping the card into the ink and then wiping it up and layering the ink with different colors. And sometimes I dry in between using my heat tool. And I was just really testing out all the different colors and to see what I liked best. I did try a multitude of techniques. I tried the ink smooshing. I think that's what this is called, highly technical crafty term here. And I tried some stenciling, I tried spritzing water, and I tried flicking water. I even tried dulling some things down with some white pigment ink when I found that some of the colors were too bold and rich. So the idea here was just to create some backgrounds. I have these large mixed media tags. I'm not quite sure the brand. I think it's a Ranger product. I could be wrong. I think it is. Anyways, these are nice big large tags. I think they're about 8 inches. And I'm just playing, going to town, making backgrounds. I ended up making 10 backgrounds, and I'm gonna create 10 different sort of art pieces with these tags. I only finished one project. I don't want to undertake too much at once, so I thought I'll just play around, make some backgrounds, and then I'll show you the one finalized tag, and then I will create a few subsequent videos to share the rest of the tags that I made. But so far, this is what I have. This is what I came up with. Here are all of the tags that I made. And again, I used Distress Oxide ink for all of these tags, along with Hero Arts white pigment ink. I did mostly ink smooshing like I showed in this video. I did a few tags with just cleaning up the ink that was on my glass mat. And then I also did a little bit of ink blending. I did some stenciling. I did some ink blending and stenciling, some flicking of water. And I made 2 of this tag. This one is very similar. I thought I was going to start off doing pairs of tags and then change my mind and just did one of everything. So that's it for all the tags. Now let's turn one of these. I'm going to select my most favorite background and turn that one into a finished project. Let's take a look. I'm going to use the Gina K Designs stamp set called Nature's Walk, and I want to use this big butterfly. So I pulled in my MISTI stamping tool, and I have some Hero Arts soft granite ink. So this ink is not water reactive. So what I'm going to do is stamp it with a nice light gray ink, and so I can use some watercolor pencils to color it in. So I stamped it a couple of times, and I've got these watercolor pencils I picked up from Amazon. I wasn't sure about the quality of them, but I wanted to test them out and see if I could create some cool results. So this is the first time that I've used these, and I just dug through and picked out a couple of colors that I like. This was like 30 bucks Canadian for 72 colored pencils. So I grabbed some purples and blues and some teals, and I just roughly colored in that butterfly. And the purpose of this is to create some gradient and some soft color fades. So first I want to lay down that color and then grab a paintbrush with some water on it. And I'm going to gently soften that pigment in the colored pencil and blend everything together. So I applied some blue and some purple, and I felt like there was too much blue on the top. So I ended up coming back in and adding some purple, but I applied color all over the body and moved that water around. I added in some more purple at the top here just to create a more darker color. And I'm not an expert at all in any way, shape, or form. I don't claim to be an expert. I just like to play, and this is me playing. So because I left my stamp on the door of my MISTI, I can restamp and redefine that butterfly image and then have the color sort of laid behind it. So I'm gonna heat emboss this with some clear embossing powder to bring my butterfly to life. So I just sprinkled on my powder. I'll pour any excess embossing powder back into the jar, and I'll heat set that butterfly until it's smooth and melted. And I love the result. So this is a fairly large tag, so I felt like it needed some more work. I wasn't quite sure what to do, so I just played around. I ended up stamping some leaves from this same stamp set in a few different colors, and I have 2 different leaves, and I'm just going to create a sort of look through the trees kind of feel, like a visual looking through the trees. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I really love the way this turned out. So I just stamped those leaves in a couple of different color greens, and I just rotated them, turned them around, and then just stamped where I felt it needed to go. And I really love the way this turned out. It looks so pretty, and it looks like we're sort of in the trees looking out into the wild or the wilderness. And so I stamped a little sentiment from the same stamp set. Into the forest I go to lose my mind and find my soul. So I inked up the edges of that and applied that down to my tag. Then I stamped a bird from the same stamp set, and I colored him in the same way I did as the butterfly and heat embossed it. And then I decided I was going to be brave and draw in a freehand branch. This was my intention all along. I could have dug through my stamp set to find a branch, but I really didn't want to get up. So I found some browns and I just laid the colors down. I used some of those watercolor pencils. I drew in my little branch. I mean, it's nothing fantastic, but it serves the purpose, and I like the way that turned out. So I'm just going to bring in some of that green around the outer edge of the tag, just blending it in. I'm using the same color as I had used for some of the leaves that I stamped. And then finally, I'm going to ink up the edge with Distress Oxide tumbled glass. What I feel like this does is it creates sort of like a misty, sort of glowy look to make it look like, I don't know, like almost magical. So the result of this tag, I had no idea where I was headed. All I wanted to do was just play, and I made a bunch of backgrounds. Then I finished off with this beautiful tag. I had so much fun just pulling out my supplies, getting crafty in my space, and creating a fun project. Okay, so that's going to be it for today's video. I only created this one tag, but I have a whole bunch of backgrounds that I'm going to continue to make, probably maybe 2 more videos to complete the full set of tags. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. I'd love to have you along my paper crafting journey. I have tons of videos on my channel to give you inspiration and ideas for crafting. Thanks so much for joining me today. Coming up on screen are some videos I think you may enjoy. Have yourself a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!